They say storms only knock down what's already weak. That November night proved they were wrong. 3 old men died within hours, different places, different causes, same ripple effect. And I was the unlucky cop who had to connect the dots. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a like. It keeps these investigations rolling. My daughter, Rose Harper, turned 1 that night. I wasn't on duty. That shift belonged to my partner, Sergeant George Hadding. My plan was simple: cheap wine, quiet evening, family time. But the universe doesn't give cops nights off, it just delays the paperwork. By midnight, 3 elderly men in Grand River City were dead. The first, Leonard Westmore, age 70, living at Bridgeview Residence, a care home with more arguments than amenities. He'd biked back from a bar on Riverside Drive when a sedan clipped him. He survived long enough to mutter a few words to the ER doctor before crashing out for good. The second, Thomas T.A. Parker, 71, found face down on the soaked football field at Lincoln Park. Broken hip, mild head injury, hypothermia. On paper, an accident; in reality, weird as hell. The third, Robert Deeks, 73, of 41 Leicester Court, beaten in his own bathroom. No subtlety, no finesse, just blunt force and bad luck. His daughter found him barely conscious. He died in the ambulance. That last one was mine, a break-in at an old man's house. Only it didn't feel like a break-in. The door glass was smashed, sure, but something about the angles, the debris, the whole scene felt staged. So there I was, late at night, slipping out of my own party, while my wife Ellie tried not to look disappointed. Another "you promised" moment. Cops collect those like parking tickets. When I hit the hospital, the attending physician flagged me down. "Busy night for the elderly," he said. 3 cases. And one of them said something before dying. Westmore, the cyclist, had croaked out his last words. Driver, fat bastard, drunk. Problem, the driver wasn't some random drunk. It was a local bookmaker, Albie Charlton, who swore he'd been sober. And sitting in the passenger seat, allegedly innocent as a choir boy, was my boss, Superintendent Andrew Deal. Big personality, bigger problems. Charlton blew 0 on the breathalyzer. Deal refused the test, which already put him on thin ice. Then came the claims, counterclaims, a witness who insisted Deal had been behind the wheel, and a whole lot of departmental politics nobody wanted to touch. And while all that was cooking, I still had a homicide on my desk. At the Deeks residence, the first on-scene officer was Hector, our tallest cop and our dimmest bulb. He'd let half the neighborhood into the house before securing anything. Contamination galore, perfect. But what mattered was this: Deeks was alive when found, and he said one word: Charlie, his grandson, who conveniently was stationed overseas. Nothing about the night made sense. 3 elderly men dead. 1 obvious murder, 1 questionable accident, 1 "that's odd" situation. I didn't know it yet, but the common thread among them was about to surface. And once it did, the whole case would blow wide open. I reached Leicester Court early. Dolly Frostick, Deeks' daughter, looked half ghost when she opened the door. She walked me through the house, pointing out details through tears. "He never left the key in the back door," she insisted. But there it was, sitting conveniently in the lock after someone smashed the glass. Staged, too neat to be a panic job. Neighbors hovered everywhere. Everyone had touched everything. Crime scene contamination level, catastrophic. At the station, George Hadding updated me on the other 2 deaths. Westmore, the cyclist, had muttered "driver, fat bastard, drunk" before dying. Problem. The passenger was Superintendent Andrew Deal, and the driver, bookmaker Albie Charlton, blew clean on the breath test. One witness insisted Deal had been the one behind the wheel outside the Paradise Hotel. George grimaced. This could get political. I didn't have time for politics. I had a homicide. At the hospital morgue, Dr. Sen walked me past cold steel drawers. Deeks, shoulder injuries, bruising, heart failure triggered by assault. Westmore, impact trauma, alcohol smell, but not from him. Parker, the simple accident, was the outlier. Broken right hip, but a wound on the left temple. A mismatch, I said. Sen shrugged, exhausted. Bodies don't always cooperate. Translation. He didn't want this to become another case file. Back home, Ellie packed to visit her aging father. I tried focusing on family. My head stayed buried in autopsies. She left at dawn. Quiet house, quiet guilt. I drove to Castlewood Court, Parker's residence. The warden told me Parker had caught a cold but insisted on going out late. He removed his emergency cord, the warden added. Didn't want us barging in. Not ideal for a man with balance issues. I found Mrs. Esco, his friend. Kind eyes, polite smile, memory slipping in and out like weak radio signal. We watched racing until after 3, she said. He felt lucky might go out. The weather she described, cold but sunny earlier, didn't match the storm during his death window. Then in her bathroom, I noticed the missing emergency pull cord, same as Parker's, a pattern. Parker had been found with an unopened bottle of rum. His pension cash, gone, head wound angle, wrong for a natural fall. As I walked out, my instincts kicked hard. 3 elderly men dead the same night. 3 scenarios that didn't align with their evidence. 3 routine-driven seniors knocked off track in different ways. Not random, not weather, not fate. Something or someone had intersected with all 3. The city didn't have a serial killer problem. It had a pressure point problem. Someone nudged 3 vulnerable men at the exact wrong moment, and the chain reaction did the rest. And I was about to find out who was behind that nudge. Sunday morning opened with mandatory misery. I had to escort Dolly Frostick back to her father's house to confirm what was missing. Her husband, Alan, tagged along, loud, defensive, and surprisingly gentle with her when it counted. The stolen items were small: a transistor radio, several WWII campaign medals, and a pocket watch with a gold coin fused to the chain. Nothing big money, but enough for a desperate thief. Then Dolly mentioned something I hadn't heard before. The back door key. Dad never left it in the lock. He always put it on the kitchen table. But Alan cut in. He kept a spare key in the old boiler shed out back. Everyone knew that. Everyone. That was the problem. I followed him outside. The boiler was full of junk, but inside it, taped under the lid, was a second, older key. If the killer knew about this spare, they could have entered quietly. So why smash the door, staging? Again. Inside the bathroom, Dolly spotted fresh scuff marks on the vinyl near the tub. He wasn't like this, he didn't fall. SGT. Wheeled later confirmed it. Force prints, likely from someone shoving Deeks during the struggle. As we left, the girl next door stepped out, Andrea Gregory. Bleached hair, heavy makeup, attitude like it was a second paycheck. She announced she was marrying Charlie the moment he returned from the army. Alan exploded. I watched. She didn't flinch. Then she casually dropped something interesting. I won't need Charlie's help now. Got a better job out at Haycroft Estate. Big house. Big money. Haycroft. The same estate tied to wealthy donors, high-end events, and from what I'd heard, more smoke than fire exits. When Charlie finally arrived on compassionate leave, he looked young and already exhausted. Good kid. Straightforward. He loved his grandfather, and he admitted something vital. There was a money stash in a box behind the bathtub panel. Grandpa kept emergency cash there. Nobody knew about it except Charlie, but the stash was still there, untouched. So whoever killed Deeks didn't know about the real money. They were after something else or nothing at all. Maybe panic. Maybe opportunity. Back at the station, George was knee-deep in the Westmore car accident mess. Witness testimony had begun shifting. The one woman who swore Superintendent Deal was driving had suddenly softened her story. Storm, poor visibility, maybe I was mistaken, she now claimed. Witnesses don't retract like that unless pressed or bribed. Deal, meanwhile, was on leave, which in department language meant stay out of sight until the heat cools down. I didn't have the bandwidth to babysit my boss's scandals. I still had 2 dead seniors whose deaths smelled wrong. On the Parker case, I sent 2 uniforms, Seymour and Hector, to sweep Lincoln Park for anything that could have caused that temple wound. Hours later, Seymour reported, "Found nothing, sir. Stones everywhere, none with obvious blood. Rain washed it all, expected but unhelpful. Then Seymour added one more detail. The man who found Parker had a Great Dane with him. Dog's the one who spotted the body. Owner says Parker tried to say something before he passed. What was it? Sounded like Polly, sir. Polly, a name, a clue, or nothing. But I'd learned soon enough. Nothing about this weekend was nothing. And the truth behind Parker's last word would crack the case open more than any autopsy could. Monday came in cold and sharp. Ellie called early, worried about her father. I told her I'd visit after work, but the case kept pulling me back in like a bad loan. At the station, I checked in on Seymour. He'd been digging into Parker's last steps, the rum purchase, his dinner receipt, his pension. Then he dropped the first breakthrough. Sir, the betting slip we found. Parker didn't just place one bet. He placed a triple roll-up, 3 horses, all winners. A treble like that meant serious cash. But Seymour hadn't found the bet in any legal shop, which led him underground. By noon, he returned with the answer. Parker used an illegal street bookmaker. Address, photo, confirmation. Parker had walked out of that shop with hundreds in cash. Enough to explain his fancy dinner. Enough to attract the wrong kind of attention. But that money wasn't on his body, wasn't in his apartment, and wasn't recorded as stolen. It vanished. Next on the board was Westmore, the cyclist. We still had the same problem. 3 people, 3 stories, one truth hiding somewhere between them. Superintendent Deal showed up at the station briefly, pale and irritated, claiming he was on holiday. I could smell whiskey and frustration on him. Peter, he said, you keep your head down on the accident. I'll handle Deal business. Sir, we need clarity. That's my point. When you chase clarity, politicians start chasing you. He walked off muttering something about pheasant hunting at Haycroft Estate, same place Andrea now worked. Too many overlaps. Meanwhile, I needed Parker's timeline pinned down, so I returned to Castlewood Court to see Mrs. Esco again. She was folding loose bills at her table. A lot of loose bills. When she saw me, she smiled as if nothing were wrong. Yes, I saw TA Friday, or was it Thursday? Oh dear. Her confusion wasn't casual, it was chronic. The warden had warned she was slipping mentally, and now it was clear. I checked her bathroom again. The emergency pull cord was still missing, cut clean. Same as Parker's. Something else hit me, the weather. She remembered sunshine Friday afternoon. That matched Thursday's forecast, not Friday's storm. She'd mixed up the days. If she misremembered the day TA visited, she might have misremembered everything around his final hours. Her confusion wasn't harmless anymore. It meant she wasn't a reliable timeline anchor. Driving back, something clicked so hard it made me pull over. Parker died on Friday night, but Mrs. Esco remembered seeing him on Friday afternoon. Except she'd already lost Friday in her memory, replaced it with Thursday. Meaning Parker may have run into her Friday evening, in the dark, in her state, with a heavy purse full of loose change. She could have panicked, swung at him, connected with his temple. He fell. Hip broke. She fled home on instinct, no memory of it later. His final word, Polly, suddenly made grim sense. Not a name, not a clue. A slurred fragment of polystyrene, the horse he'd won big on. His final thought before the cold took him. I went straight to Dr. Sen. Doctor, I need Mrs. Esco evaluated. She may have struck Parker by accident. He looked at me long, tired. Inspector, that woman is 2 steps from collapse. If she did what you're implying, she won't remember it and she can't defend herself. Memory or not, I need confirmation, he sighed. I'll check her condition, but tread lightly. Before leaving the hospital, I stopped by the morgue again. Looking at Parker's body, the wound made perfect sense now. Not an attacker, not a mugger. A frightened elderly woman swinging blind in the dark with a weighted purse. Outside, snow started drifting. I drove to Ellie's parents' house thinking it would be a brief visit. It wasn't. Ellie's father was slipping. Her mother was struggling. And Ellie looked at me like she needed backup, not an "I'll try," but a real partner. I stayed overnight. At 3 a.m., lying awake, everything aligned sharply. Parker's death wasn't murder, but Deke's was. And Westmore's accident was turning political fast. 3 seniors, 3 events, 3 dominoes falling on the same night. Random coincidence. No chance. Someone or several someones had ties running through all of them, and in the morning the case would explode. Tuesday started with tension thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Superintendent Deal had been summoned to the deputy chief's office. High-level meetings never mean anything good for people wearing uniforms. I wasn't invited, but I heard the fallout when Deal stormed out, door hitting the wall, voice echoing down the hall. Minutes later, he barged straight into my office. "Peter, you look like hell. Get over it." He tossed a stack of pheasant feathers on my desk like a trophy from a hunt gone wrong. "What's this?" I asked. "A reminder that life keeps shooting at you whether you're ready or not." Then he leaned closer. "And keep your nose out of my accident case." I'd heard enough. "With respect, sir," Westmore's last words pointed at you. "And with respect back," he snapped. "If I were behind the wheel, I wouldn't be stupid enough to let anyone hear about it." Then he walked out, same force, less certainty. Good cops know when someone's hiding something. Great cops know when someone's hiding too much. I turned my attention to the Deeks case. Progress at last. One of the stolen medals surfaced at an antique shop, reported by the shop owner, Edwin Sutton. I met Sutton mid-afternoon. He wore the artificial politeness of a man who knew how close he'd been to trouble in the past. "My assistant bought them for $5, said the seller was a 20-something guy, brown hair, stocky build." "Did he say anything else?" "Yes," Sutton said. "He asked, 'Is that all?' meaning the price." If someone was selling stolen medals for $5, this wasn't a professional burglary. This was impulsive, sloppy, reckless. When I got back to the station, news hit harder. Mrs. Esco, the confused neighbor from Castlewood, had attempted suicide. Pills. Quiet. Alone. Seymour found her and got her to the hospital just in time. Guilt sat heavy in my chest. My questions had pushed her right to the edge. Dr. Sen approached me in the hallway. "She's alive but fragile, mind slipping, memory fractured, don't expect clarity." But I needed clarity. I sat beside her hospital bed. Her voice was thin. I saw Tap. He was walking. I thought someone was after me. I swung, ran. Even in her fading state, the truth bled through. She'd swung her purse in panic. A weighted purse with heavy coins, enough to fracture Parker's temple. Her crime wasn't a crime, it was fear. Aging, confusion, bad timing. And worse, someone else had exploited that confusion. Because Parker's money still hadn't been found. Later that evening, Seymour returned with a jacket full of cash, crumpled bills he'd retrieved from the man who found Parker, Cox, the Great Dane owner. He panicked, Seymour explained. He saw the bills fall out when he found the body. Took them, didn't know what to do, he's ready to return everything. Parker's final winnings found, timeline aligned, manner of death explained. One domino stood upright, but the Deeks killing was still raw, and Westmore's accident was starting to smell like a setup. By the time I got home, Ellie called. Her father had gotten lost in their backyard, searching for a greenhouse they hadn't had in decades. She was exhausted, stretched thin. "I need you here," she said quietly. Guilt settled deeper. After hanging up, I reviewed the 3 deaths on my board. PARKER, accidental collision of fear and confusion. WESTMORE, possible cover-up, involving Deal and a witness who suddenly changed her story. DEEKS, targeted assault, staged break-in, missing petty items, wrong key in the lock. 3 stories one night. While I stared at the board, a realization snapped into place like a trap closing. Every event connected to someone who connected to someone else. This wasn't coincidence. It was traffic on the same intersection. And Haycroft Estate sat at the center of that intersection. Deal, Charlton, Andrea, powerful guests, private events, illegal money flows. Only one person knew all the players. And tomorrow I would finally confront them. Snow hit hard Wednesday morning as I headed to Haycroft Estate to bring in Andrea Gregory. She was the last open thread in the Deeks homicide, and threads like that usually lead straight to the fire. Haycroft was peak high society. Long driveway, imported trees, people with money who thought rules were optional. Barney Castle met us outside. Polished, alert, already annoyed. "We're here for Andrea," I told him. He didn't fight it, which meant he knew trouble was inbound. Andrea descended the staircase in a spotless uniform, acting like the estate was her kingdom. When we told her she was coming with us for questioning, she tried on a fake confident smile, but I could see real panic behind it. Before we got her to the cruiser, a convoy of SUVs rolled in. Out stepped Superintendent Deal, Albie Charlton, and Sir William Haycroft. Perfect. 3 men I didn't need around a fragile investigation. Deal groaned. "Oh hell. Are you really arresting the maid right now?" "Accessory to murder," SGT. Wield clarified. That lit the fuse. Sir William started shouting about overreach. Castle positioned himself like security. Deal dragged me aside. "You just jump-started a mess," he hissed. "Task Force had an operation here." "What operation?" he exhaled, frustrated. "The estate's private jet was being used to smuggle heroin, small loads, inside imported game birds. Frozen, cleaned, stuffed, flown in for premium hunts. The pickup man was supposed to collect today." I stared. "You're telling me pheasants were drug mules?" "Yes," he snapped. "And your arrival scared off the courier." Before I could respond, a van rumbled in the game dealer's truck. Today's shipment. The timing was either a miracle or a confession. Wield and I moved fast. "Hold the truck. Open every crate." We tore through bird after bird. Nothing, just feathers, frozen cavities, clean cuts. Then a tech shouted, "Found something." Inside one bird, plastic-wrapped brick. Heroin, exactly the kind Deal described. Castle went gray. Sir William went silent. Andrea stared like she'd walked into the wrong TV show. Deal turned to her. "Who looped you into this?" "Castle, someone else," Andrea cracked instantly. "It wasn't me, it was Corporal Gelot. He said Deeks kept money at home. I just helped him get inside. That's it. I didn't know anything about drugs." The picture snapped together. Andrea plus Gelot equals break-in and assault on Deeks. Castle equals logistics support for the smuggling ring. Sir William equals pretended ignorance. Deal equals fully entangled, even if not dirty. We cuffed Andrea. She didn't resist now, fear finally winning out over attitude. But something else clicked as snow kept covering the estate grounds. 3 elderly men dead the same night. A staged burglary. A smuggling pipeline exposed by accident. A superintendent in the blast radius. A maid who thought she was hustling her way up. A soldier who turned into a criminal on weekends. All separate until you viewed them from altitude. They were pressure points. Small decisions. Small lies. Small nudges. And when the storm hit that November night, every fault line snapped at once. Tomorrow I'd have to resolve it all: Deeks, Westmore, Parker, Deal, Castle, the smuggling pipeline, the cover-ups, the loose statements, the collapsing alibis. One final sweep. One final confrontation. One final hook to pull the entire mess into daylight. By Thursday morning, the whole city felt like it was waiting to exhale. The snow was heavy, the streets were quiet, and every thread in the investigation pointed in one direction. Time to pull the plug and drag everything into the open. First stop was the county jail to squeeze Corporal Gelot. He'd already confessed to breaking into Deek's home with Andrea, but now he looked like a man realizing the ground under him was gone. "You didn't just pick a random house," I said. "You targeted Deeks." He swallowed. "He had cash. Andrea said the granddaughter next door was always talking about it. I didn't mean to kill him." He grabbed at me, slipped. I panicked. "Nobody breaks a door, attacks a 70-year-old and calls it a panic," I said. "And while you were chasing pocket money, you didn't notice his real savings sitting 10 feet away." He shut down. That was enough. Next, Westmore, the cyclist. Now that the smuggling ring was exposed at Haycroft, the pieces clicked into place. The witness who claimed Deal was behind the wheel didn't retract her story because she got scared. She retracted because someone pressured her. I confronted her again, this time at her workplace, the Bridgeview residence. "You didn't misremember," I told her. "You were coerced." She folded instantly. "That hotel manager, Abby, he told me police were involved in something big, said if I stayed quiet, I'd stay safe." I didn't know what to do. That was the missing link. Abby, the hotel manager tied to Castle. He was the redirect artist, nudging witnesses, shaping narratives, keeping the estate out of headlines. So I went to him next. He didn't smirk this time. You knew Deal wasn't driving, I said, but you also knew Castle needed the estate clean, so you leaned on witnesses. And when Westmore got hit, you jumped to protect your better clients. He adjusted his tie. Inspector, I simply prevent wealthy people from being inconvenienced. By hiding a death behind a lie, he shrugged. Ironically, your superintendent wasn't even the guilty one. Charlton was clean. Deal was drunk but not driving, but perception matters more than truth. He wasn't wrong. Not morally right, but operationally accurate. That left Parker, the last question mark. But Mrs. Esco's condition worsened overnight. She drifted in and out, her memory dissolving like snow in warm hands. The doctor signaled me into her room. She's stable, he said, but her clarity won't return. I sat with her anyway. TA, was he angry at me? She whispered. No, I said. He wasn't angry at anyone. It was an accident, a terrible one. She nodded, relieved. Good, I didn't want to leave it wrong. When I stepped out into the hall, everything finally settled. 3 deaths. Parker, struck by panic and confusion, collapsing in the cold. Westmore, genuine accident, twisted into political cover-up. Deeks, the only true homicide, committed by a foolish young soldier and a reckless girl pretending she was smarter than she was. 3 cases that looked connected because they happened in the same storm, but the real connection was simpler. Small lies, small motives, small nudges, all exploding on the same night. The kind of night every detective fears. By evening, after filing the last reports, I drove home. Ellie had returned with Rose. The house smelled like normal life again, quiet, warm, steady. You look finished, Ellie said softly. I am, but the case is done. Good, then come sit. She missed you. I held my daughter, feeling a weight drop off my shoulders. Outside, the snow kept falling, erasing footprints, smoothing edges. The city would forget this case eventually, but I wouldn't. Storms don't reveal weaknesses. They reveal the pressure that was already there. Thanks for staying through the investigation. If you want more cases like this, hit subscribe and like the video. Now tell me in the comments, which twist hit you the hardest?